ShieldBreakers, Weekend Warrior Nate here, the Overlord with
Weekend Warrior Monica, Wenchwoman.
Here to present a new series. ShieldBreaker presents Malifaux Survival 101. The premise of this series is to teach you the basics of the game of Malifaux. We'll eventually be rolling into further strategies such as soulstone usage, control hand, crew selection, strategies and schemes. But for now, the basics. What do we got today, Monica?
Today we have some stuff set up for you. I'm fielding the Marcus crew, the Claw and Fang starter box. Nate here has the Lady Justice,
Bound by Law.
Bound by Law box. Now he's got the first edition models, so if they look a little different, that's why. So we have some stuff set up to show you some basic things like shooting and charging and walking, and some extra things like some of Marcus's beasts have a terrifying and what happens if you fail that test.
I have hard to wound on my models.
And we've got some other fun stuff in there for you, like some modifications on your flips. So we're hoping to show you guys a whole bunch of fun stuff.
Awesome. So as she said, a turn in a nutshell. This is going to be like turn 2 or 3. We're already in the middle of the fighting, or the fighting, turn 2, the fighting's just about to start, would be the best way to review this. There are no schemes or strategies in plays. Again, this is just core mechanics. We're going to go through the details on how the duels are operated, how cheating happens, and how plus and minus flips, twists will modify a result.
We're also going to try to cover some, on the front of your card, on the character card, you'll find their stat line, which has their defense, willpower, wounds, walk length, charge length, and their height. It also has a bunch of abilities on the bottom of it. We're going to try and highlight some of the more common abilities that you will see on your cards, like the hard to wound. Marcus and Miranda have Accomplice, so we're going to try to utilize that to show you guys some chain activations. As I mentioned before, the terrifying test as well.
Fantastic. So with that, we will shift the camera over to the viewing angle. We will go through the turn setup, which will include shuffling the deck, cutting the deck, the initial draw, and the initiative flip. And then we will go from there.
So at the beginning of every turn, everyone shuffles their deck. If you do have a control hand, you leave that to the side. You do not shuffle that in.
Now, as some of you are probably noticing quickly looking, we are using 2 different control decks. I'm using the new light deck introduced this year at Gen Con.
And I have the retro poker deck.
Weird produces a variety of decks. There are close to 10 different decks that are out. There is no requirement to use one or the other. It's a matter of preference. I go between the puppet deck, the retro deck, the Evil Baby Orphanage deck, the new light deck and the dark deck, and then of course the original faction decks. I have a preference for decks other than the original faction decks because the newer decks are plastic cards as opposed to traditional cardboard and cardstock. But again, that's just a preference.
There's no real rule of thumb for shuffling. I usually shuffle at least 3 or 4 times just to make sure I got a good shuffle in.
Once both players have completed shuffling, it is mandatory to offer a cut.
It's not mandatory to accept having to cut. You just have to offer it.
And then after a cut is accomplished, you're allowed one final shuffle. Like so. Once the decks have been shuffled and agreed upon by both players, you draw out your control hands. The average control hand is 6 cards. 6.
That can be modified by different upgrades or abilities, but both of us right now have a 6-card hand.
Most common is called Russian Magic, which allows you to draw an additional card, but you have to discard a card after you do so.
Now, inserting right here, since we're kind of setting up a turn 2 scenario, if this had been actual turn 2, we would possibly have cards left in our hand from turn 1. We could, at this point, discard cards and then draw back up to 6.
Indeed.
But the reason you discard after shuffling is so that you don't draw those cards right back in.
Once both control hands have been settled on, both players have the option to spend a soulstone to draw 2 extra cards and discard 2 cards if they so desire. I'm going to go ahead and exercise that option. So I'm going to draw 2 extra cards. And then I'm going to discard 2 cards.
You need to put them up here, babe. You should probably have the deck down here.
Here we go.
I am not going to exercise that option.
All right. Now that we both have settled on our control hand, we flip the top cards of our deck to represent initiative. Okay. So at this point, Monica has flipped a 9 of books, and I have flipped a 3 of rams, which means Monica, the winch woman, has won the initiative.
So I won the initiative, but that does not mean that I have to go first. Winning the initiative flip means you get to choose who goes first. I'm going to go ahead and let the Overlord go take the first turn.
Fantastic, thank you. Although usually that's done because you want somebody to get closer or something along that line. I'm going to go ahead and activate
reactionary movements.
The Death Marshal over on this side of the field. He is going to perform a walk action, stated on his card as a 5, meaning he gets to move 5 inches. His second action is going to be to shoot. His Peacebringer has a range of 10 inches, and we're going to target Kojo while within range. So, now we get to our first opposed duel. I will take my Death Marshal card and use my Peacebringer, which says I have a basic stat of 5, and I flip the top card of my deck.
Kojo is going to use his defense, correct?
Correct.
And his base defense is 5, so I will add that to his flip.
Okay. So I have a 5 on the card plus a 5 on the stat. I have a total of 10.
I have a 5 on the stat and a 3 on the card, which gives me a total of 8, so I am currently losing.
Okay. At this point, the losing player, the wenchwoman in this case, gets the first option to cheat fate. Cheating fate is where you take a card from your control hand and you discard it to replace the card that you flipped from your deck.
I'm going to go ahead and use this card. So now I have an 8 plus a 5, which gives me a 13.
Now that she's winning, means my shot's going to miss, which means I now have the choice to either cheat myself or to let the shot miss. I'm going to go ahead and cheat myself as well. And I'm going to cheat down a 9, bringing me up to a total of 14, which now means I hit.
So after you succeed, you need to check for any triggers on your card that are tied to your suit. His is the mask, mine is also the mask. Kojo does not have any defensive triggers.
And for mine, the Peacebringer has a trigger. It's called Crit Strike. It requires a ram to be on the final card used in the duel, which the final card is a mask for me, so I do not get my trigger. Now we compare duel totals. I have a 14.
I have a 13.
There is a 1 difference, which you will learn very quickly about a weak, moderate, severe chart. It's an accuracy chart. 1 to 5 represents weak. 6 to 10 represents moderate, and 11 or greater represents severe.
That's for damage.
Also works for the accuracy.
Right, but that translates weak is a negative flip, moderate is a neutral flip, and severe is a positive flip. Also to take into consideration, if you tie, ties go to the attacker and become a double negative flip.
Exactly. So, since we're in the 1 to 5 range, I get a negative flip added to my duel, which means I will flip into 1 additional card on top of the card I would flip, the basic card I would flip anyways, and I have to take the lower of the 2. The exception to this rule are jokers. Jokers must always be chosen under a negative condition. Red Joker will trump any other card except for a Black Joker. Black Joker trumps everything.
Red Joker counts as severe plus weak damage. Black Joker is 0 damage. Black Joker always equals 0. If you flip a Red Joker on a regular card flip, it equals 14.
Exactly. And the suit of your choice. So I have flipped a 9 and a 12. Because I'm under a negative condition, I choose the weaker of the 2 cards, which will be the 9, which is in the moderate range, as I described earlier. We're in the 6 to 10 frame range. My moderate damage is 3. When you look at a card's printed damage code, it has 3 numbers. In this case, it is 2/3/5, representing weak, moderate, and severe. And so I'm in the severe range, which means 3 damage. So he has walked and he has shot, which means he has completed his activation. How I know that is every model generates 2 general action points.
Unless it is a master, in which case it generates 3.
Thank you. These action points can be used in a variety of ways. As you just saw, I performed a walk action and a shoot action. You can also use it to do double walks, shoot twice if you happen to be in range. You'll see other options here down the line. With that, my model is activated and we play passes to the Wenchwoman.
Alright, well I'm going to go ahead and activate my Jackalope over here. He's going to go ahead and charge at the judge, who's this guy over here. Charges cost 2 general AP, so this will take his entire activation, but they do grant you 2 claw mark range attacks. So you'll see on your card you've got projectile. When you look at the range, you'll see a projectile mark, a claw mark, or no mark whatsoever. If your range has a claw mark with it, along with the inches, you are allowed to use any attack that uses that claw mark and costs 1 AP action. You get 2 of those for each charge.
The projectile icon is represented by a pistol.
So the Jackalope has a charge range on his stat line of 7 inches. He easily makes it. I'm going to check and see what his melee range is, which is 1. So he has to be within 1 inch of the judge in order to succeed his charge. You are not allowed, pre-measuring is allowed in Malifaux. You are not allowed to charge if you will fail. You have to charge in a straight line. If you're doing a normal walk action, you can walk whatever direction you want to, around corners, weaving, whatever. Charging has to be in a straight line. You can charge, but you can charge to the side if you want to avoid, or if I wanted to avoid being in range of this Death Marshal, I could charge over to this side, or whatever happens to be relevant. But now that I've moved, I'm going to go ahead and do my attacks. I have a base of 4, and I'm going to flip a 2.
And this will be targeting my defense, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The judge has a base defense of 5, so same order. I have flipped a 7. So again, we compare totals.
I have a 6.
And I have a 12.
So I am losing again. Now I do get another attack, so I might just let this one go.
Okay. An important note, if she does choose to skip her option to cheat, the other player still gets his option. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's important to cheat to allow an attack to hit, because you want it to do for whatever reason, to pull off a particular trigger, if you're looking for a certain suit. There are a lot of reasons to cheat, even though you've already succeeded in your attack or defense.
I am going to go ahead and cheat it up to a total of 12.
Okay. So that's a tying total. I'm going to go ahead and let that stand. As she told us before, a tie is a double twist negative to the flip. The judge has an ability called Hard to Wound, which adds an additional negative twist.
Now, in relation to the negatives, you can and the positives, you can only go to a total of flipping 4 cards, so modifying it plus or minus 3, which will equal flipping 4 cards. That is the extent. So we are currently at a negative 3. If we had any other modifiers that would currently negify it, it would just be moot. It wouldn't affect it whatsoever.
In the case of plus and minus flips, they cancel each other out. Mm-hmm. Every plus flip cancels a single negative flip.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, well that was a good flip, except for that 2 down there. So the 2 is the card that's going to become the card that ranks. The damage code on the Jackalope is a 112. However, he deals plus 2 damage if he charged. So it will be a total of 3 wounds on the judge.
Fantastic. Scary little bugger. Alright.
Second attack.
Indeed. So again, combine our melee totals. Her melee
I have
versus...
another 6!
And I have an 8.
Apparently I can't get away from 2s today. I'm going to cheat it up to a 12 again.
Okay. To a 12, you say. So, and the part of practice, I'm going to cheat to a 13 and dodge the attack. At this point, now that I have successfully dodged this action, no damage would be dealt, and we wouldn't flip any additional cards.
Now, I did say that the charge takes 2 action points for the jackalope, and that would be his entire move. However, he does have a 0 action tactical action. It doesn't cost any AP points, but if it does designate itself as a 0 action, you can only use 1 of those per turn. Activation, sorry. So he does have a 0 action that's called Leap. It moves him up to his charge range away anywhere he wants, ignoring terrain and models during the move. So I can get him back away from the judge if I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and try that. It gives me a 5, a cast of 5. My target number is a 10 of mask, so I do need at least a 5 and a mask to succeed. Which it fails on both attempts, and I'm not going to go ahead and cheat it. So he's just going to stay there.
Okay.
Oftentimes I'll just go, yeah, we'll see if he succeeds. Alright, he's stuck there.
Alright. So I assume that concludes the Jackalope's activation?
That concludes the Jackalope's activation.
Okay.
Back to you.
Play returns back to me then. So I am going to activate one of my Death Marshals. This one here. Who's going to attempt to charge the Razor Spine Rattler.
Now, when he declares that charge action, I need to tell him that my Rattler has an ability saying it is terrifying living 11. What that means is if his model has the living characteristic, which is listed on the top underneath the name,
and it does,
he has to take a terror test, target number 11, anytime he either targets my model or ends a walk action within my model's engagement range.
Fantastic. Well, the Death Marshal has a willpower of 6, so I need a 5 or greater on the deck. And a 10 will pass. So having passed the Terrifying Duel, the Death Marshal is now allowed to complete his turn as complete the action that I just declared, which is a charge. Because I passed the Terrifying Duel against the Razor Spine Rattler, I am now immune to any future Terrifying Duels that the Razor Spine Rattler may force me to take.
In this turn.
For the remainder of this turn. Next turn, I will have to retest again. If I encounter a different model that has a Terrifying ability, then I will have to test for that model's individual Terrifying test. So, the Death Marshal has a charge of 6 inches. And a melee range of 1 inch, which we have succeeded in a charge. Again, like she said, if I couldn't succeed the charge, I couldn't declare it. 2 1 AP close combat attacks, the claw marks. First one will be a Peacebringer Blade, which I start with a 5, targeting defense.
Now, after he flips his card,
Okay, which brings me to a total of 13.
Miranda affects my defense flips a little bit. She has an ability that friendly beast models, characteristic, all of Marcus's box has the beast characteristic, within 3 inches of her, besides herself, gain a positive to the defense flips. The Rattler is within 3 of Miranda, so I get to flip 2 cards for my defense flip and take the best one. Now, when it's a positive flip, you do get to choose. There might be reasons you want to choose the lower one if you're going after a particular suit. Usually people will take the higher one, like that. So Jack is an 11, plus my defense of 6, so I have a 17.
Impressive. My 13 is nowhere near that. So I'm going to let this attack miss. Could be because I don't have the card good enough. Could be I want to save a better card for a later attack. So we're going to go straight to the second attack. And I'm going to start with a 7.
Again, I do get to flip 2 cards because of Miranda. And I get another 17.
So the Rattler is going to dodge both of my attacks, which means my charge action is essentially failed. No damage is dealt to the Rattler. I have no 0 actions to accomplish. Therefore, play passes back to the Winchwoman.
And I'm going to go ahead and have Kojo over here. He's going to take an interact action. Most interact actions cost 1 action point. They're usually related to your particular strategy or scheme. Right now we're just doing it to show you guys how it works. So he's using 1 action point. He's going to drop a scheme marker in base contact with himself. Now the scheme markers are 0 height. They don't block anything. You can stand on top of them, whatever. They don't really affect play. in any way other than possibly getting me victory points later down the line.
Important notes about interact actions. They may not be taken while you are engaged unless you are targeting a model you are engaged with. There are specific schemes that involve that particular scenario, such as cursed object or distract.
And for his other action point, Kojo is going to go ahead and walk 4 inches. Go ahead and come up here. Gets him in better range of possibly attacking the judge, possibly attacking the death marshal further on down the line.
All right. Anything else for Kojo?
He is done.
Fantastic. I'm going to move to the judge now to display. The big monkey kind of scares me. The little rabbit, not so much. So the judge is going to do what's called the disengaging strike.
And Kojo is an ape, not a monkey.
A disengaging strike happens anytime you declare a walk action that will pull you out of the melee range of a model you are currently engaged with.
Meaning, if he wanted to engage my Kojo to tie him up next turn, he could just walk the judge around the jackalope as long as he stays in the jackalope's melee range as much as he wants. Even if Kojo wasn't there, he could just walk circles around the jackalope if he wanted to for whatever reason.
Correct. So, having declared a walk action that will pull me out of her melee range, we do a disengaging strike. I use my defense. She uses her basic melee attack.
Stat line. It does not do damage.
I have a 9.
I have an 11.
Okay.
Jackalope says you stay.
Jackalope says I stay. Because I have failed this duel and I am electing not to cheat, that means the walk action is failed and I have lost the AP to use it. So the judge has 1 AP remaining. I'm going to go ahead and attempt another disengaging strike. Now I have an 11.
I have a 15. Jackalope still says no.
Okay, judge is going to stay put.
The
Again,
jackalope can be very stubborn when he wants to be.
actually, just to show that it is an option. You are at a what now?
15?
A 15, you say. Okay. So I'm going to cheat in a king to give myself an 18. Now she gets the option to cheat, as I was losing the duel first.
I'm going to opt not to cheat and let him walk away.
Okay.
For one thing, if I get to charge him again, that means I get +2 damage to my attacks.
Now it's important to note these actions we're taking are not necessarily the smartest actions. They're just for showing the rules. With that, the judge is done.
And my Razor Spine Rattler is going to go ahead and activate. He's going to attempt to hit the Death Marshal that's kind of right there in front of him.
Poor Deathy.
That's a melee action.
Alright. Targeting my defense.
Yes. I start out with a 5 of mask.
And I start out with a 5 defense. We both flip kings. So we're both at 18.
Now, it's
Ties.
important to note, I have a ram on my card that I flipped. I have a mask on my attack action that is given to me as part of my melee stat. That means that I currently have an 18 mask ram. So you'll see that some triggers require 1 suit, some of them require 2 suits or more, or double suits. So it's important to know that your suits can stack between your stat card and your deck card.
Indeed. Right now we are tied. All ties will always go to the attacker.
Meaning that he's currently losing, he gets the first chance to cheat.
There's only 1 card in the deck that beats a king, and that's a red joker. So I'm going to decline.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead. So ties are a double negative.
And I have hard to wound.
You do have hard to wound, so that's a triple negative.
Correct. Again, the maximum number of cards you can flip is 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. So right now we're sitting on a weak, which is 2 damage. He also gains the poison +2 condition.
Fantastic.
Poison gets, it piles up, it stacks. So as I give him more and more poison, he just adds more numbers to his poison amount. Poison will be addressed at the end of the turn.
You can mark it in any way you want. I use dice, and then a note on the card. The cards are laminated, so you can write on them with dry erase markers. Some people have markers or tokens that they use to represent poison. That's all completely up to you,
Now,
as long as it's clear to both sides.
I did forget to state, I do have a trigger. It's a given trigger. The trigger, the mask that they give me in the stat line is the suit that's required for the trigger. It's called reposition. After succeeding, so it would have happened before damaging, push this model up to 3 inches in any direction. I'm not really going to bother with that. I'm just going to sit here and hit him some more.
Okay. Triggers are completely optional. Okay, so second attack.
I have a whopping 6.
And I have an 11. I finally dodged one off the card. Now an important...
We're going to go ahead and just let it miss.
Okay, so an important note on the cheating mechanic. You do cheat from your control hand, as stated before. Your control hand is only 6, maybe 7 cards, depending on your setup. Usually it's 6. That resource has to last you the entire turn. It does reset every turn, with you drawing a new hand like we showed at the beginning. But resource management is a very important aspect of this game. Sometimes while you can cheat the win, it's not wise to cheat the win because you might need that card somewhere else.
You kind of have to weigh out who's important where, because I remember neither one of us has activated our masters, so we might want to save those cards for something important with our masters as well.
Exactly. So I assume the Rattler is done?
Rattler is done.
Okay.
It is on to you.
So I'm going to activate my last remaining Death Marshal, who is going to attempt a charge on the Kerberos.
Kerberos is also terrifying against living models and target number 11.
Okay. Again, I have a willpower 6, so I'm looking for a 5 off the deck. That's a 4.
Now, if he leaves it at the 4, he failed, which means that he is paralyzed for this turn and loses all of his action points that he would have generated. He cannot do anything.
Indeed, and that is going to be the case. The Death Marshal's activation immediately ends, with no further options allowed to be taken. It's important to note it says, if you fail terrifying deaths during your activation, there are abilities that allow you to attack outside of an activation, and if that forces you to make a terrifying test and you fail, you will gain paralyzed and have to skip your actual activation.
Alright, so my next activation, I'm going to go ahead and activate Miranda. She is going to go ahead and try to position herself. She has a walk of 6. And I kind of want her to stay in a specific range.
As we mentioned before, pre-measuring is fully allowed.
Kind of want her to end up right about there. So she's going to walk. She's not going to take her full walk action, which is fully legal. Within 6 of you. Alright, I did want her within 6 inches of both of them, so I have accomplished that. Now, the reason I wanted them her within 6 inches of them, she's going to go ahead and cast, so that was one action point. She's going to use her other action point to cast Primal Flame on Kojo. What Primal Flame does is target beast. Again, all of Marcus's crew has the beast characteristic, and Marcus has this lovely thing where he can hire beasts out of faction. So he likes the beast thing. Target beast heals 1 or 2 or 3 damage depending on what I flip. So first I have to succeed in the cast action. The cast they give me is a 6 book. My target number is 12 books, so they already give me the book. I just needed a 6. My range is 6 inches, which is what I was measuring from Miranda to Kojo. So I get a jack, which is an 11. So I'm on a 17, which is well over the 12 mark they gave me.
Fantastic.
So now I flip to find out how much I heal. 4 is a weak card, so he heals 1 damage.
Healing flips like this are allowed to be cheated. So she has the option to cheat if she so desires.
And then her action points are done, but Miranda has an ability on the front of her card that states that after this, it's called Accomplice. It's actually fairly common. After this model ends its activation, a friendly model within 6 inches, friendly just means on your crew, may activate immediately as a chain activation. Chain activations pop up a lot. You can have up to 2 models activate in 1 turn through chain activations. After you've activated another model, you can't chain activate to yet another model to have a 3rd activation in your turn.
The other version that commonly shows up is called Companion, and it works just like Accomplice, but backwards.
So if a model ends its activation within 6 inches of the model that has Companion, then that model can activate.
Exactly.
It's important to really read what your card is saying so you know which direction you are taking it. But that is why I wanted her within 6 inches of Marcus, is so that now Marcus can activate. Now Marcus is the master of my crew. He has 3 action points that he can utilize. He's going to go ahead and start with a 1 action point, Law of Meat. It's a cast action. He's going to go ahead and target the Death Marshal that tried to charge my Kerberos over here, this guy right here. It's got a 12-inch range. Well within range there. The cast number they give me is a 7 of book. The target number is a 10 book mask, so I do need a 3 of mask to get it off. It does resist with willpower, so he does have the chance to try and fight it off. I am going to go ahead and use a soulstone to buy a suit. We'll go into more detail in a later video, but what that means is I'm spending one of his cash soulstones that he started out the game with to guarantee myself a mask. So that all I have to worry about is getting a 3 or higher. So you saw with that leap, sometimes the suit is a little difficult to get.
The other option she would have is to look at her control hand and verify whether she had a card capable of meeting the requirements on hand already.
So I'm going to go ahead and flip for succeeding in the Law of Meat. I got an 8, which gives me a total of 15.
And what's your total with suits included?
15 book, mask, raven.
So the book...
Crow. Whatever it is. Big
crow.
blackbird.
The crow from the card, the book from the printed stat, and the mask purchased from a soulstone.
Now if I had flipped a mask, I would then just have double mask.
And the soulstone would be lost.
Now what this does, as he's deciding whether or not he wants to resist, or flipping for his resist.
I have to flip the card. I do not have a choice to decline. You do if you're targeting your own models, but we'll get into that later in another video.
What the Law of Meat does is he tries to decide whether or not he wants to cheat it. The target gains the following condition until the end of the turn, target being the model that I targeted, that Death Marshal. The condition that it outlines is called Prey. This model may not take charge actions, and while this model is engaged in melee, may only take walk actions. Now, in a normal game, I would normally take this use this against a model that has not activated because it's only good until the end of the turn. Meaning, next turn, when he goes to activate that model, this condition is going to be gone.
Right. But the important part about this comes next. I'm going to choose to decline. I'm going to accept the condition, knowing that it disappears at the end of the turn, so it won't affect my model next activation. But now Marcus gets another fun option, being a master and 2 AP remaining.
I'm going to go ahead and charge the... We're going to go ahead and charge Justice, since I do have range to her.
There we go.
Being a master, Marcus has 3 action points. He used 1 of them on the Law of Meat. He has 2 to dedicate to a charge. He has a melee range of 2, so I will try to maximize that.
So it's important to note that while all of our actions that you've seen so far have all been directed against the same model, this shows that you don't have to do that. If there are multiple people in range for various actions, you can target as many different people as you have the options to do so. By performing Law of Meat on a Death Marshal and charging Lady Justice, Marcus has extended his threat considerably.
So now I'm going to go ahead and take my 2 1-action melee attacks against Lady Justice.
Okay.
First one I have a base of 6. It's against her defense. So I am sitting on a 19 book.
Very well. I am at a 7, Ram, and Raven.
Alright, so he has a total of 7. I have a total of 19. So he has the first option to cheat.
Unfortunately, my control hand sucks, therefore I decline.
And I am not going to mess with this. I mean, there's not much I can do to improve this.
Now she's succeeded. She can check for triggers.
I have a book on the card, and I have a book trigger. It's called Primal Awakening. After damaging, so after I flip the cards for damaging the model, the target gains the following condition until the end of the turn. Primal. this model gains the beast characteristic. So Marcus does a lot of stuff with beasts. So he's turning Lady Justice into a beast.
Fantastic.
So the difference is 12, so I will get a positive flip to my damage.
Since we're in the 11 plus severe category.
That's lovely.
Oh, the Black Joker.
So, I mean, I had a 2, but the Black Joker does trump everything and equals 0 damage.
Had it been any card other than the Black Joker, she could choose the one she wanted to apply damage.
I could also cheat it if I wanted to, as long as there's not a negative modifier on the damage flip.
Exactly.
So because my trigger specifies after damaging, and the Joker does not do any damage, the Black Joker, that means my trigger doesn't go off and Lady Justice is not a beast. But also, whenever you have the Black Joker, you are not allowed to cheat it in any way.
Correct. Alright, so Marcus can then move on to his second melee attack then?
Yup. I mean, you still have the book. I have an 11. And Red Joker.
I have a Red Joker, which, as we said before, counts as a 14 and the suit of my choice.
Now, because I'm losing, I would normally be allowed to cheat first. But because he flipped the Red Joker out of his deck, the opposing player is not allowed to cheat.
Exactly.
If he had brought it out of his control hand, yes, I'd be allowed to cheat. Not much I can do to match it, but I could try.
So my grand total is a 14 plus a 5, which is a 19. I have a ram printed on my defense, and I'm going to choose this as a mask. And the reason why I'm doing that is A, it's wild, and I'm allowed to choose whatever suit I want. And B, Lady Justice has a defense trigger called Riposte. It requires a ram and a mask in her defense duel, which I now have, thanks to the Red Joker. It says, after a melee attack fails against this model, which just happened because I won this duel, this model will deal a 3, 4, 6 to the attacker. Again, weak, moderate, severe. This damage receives a negative twist. So I will flip 2 cards.
And that also is important because that means he can't cheat that damage because it's got a negative twist on it.
Indeed. I flipped an 8 and a 10, which both fall into the moderate category, which is going to be 4 damage.
I'm going to go ahead and spend another one of Marcus's Soulstones to damage prevent. What that means is, he's got 4 Soulstones to start. I spent 1 on a card, and I spending 1 right now. And he gets to flip 1 card, and he gets to prevent 1, 2, or 3 damage. Or if it's a Black Joker, 0. If it's a Red Joker, he prevents all of it.
And again, this is based on the same weak, moderate, severe scale we've been using.
So he prevents 2 of it, so he still takes 2 damage.
Damage preventions are not allowed to be cheated in any condition, any circumstance. Alright, so that is 3 action points used by Marcus. Does he have any 0 actions he wishes to use?
He does have a 0 action, but I think I'm going to pass on it.
Okay. So with that, we have pretty much covered the overall basics of a turn. The last things we're going to go over are end turn also.
So essentially we're just passing everybody else's turn.
You always have the option to pass models, so my remaining 2 activations are going to pass.
And my remaining 1 activation is going to pass.
Now what brings us to end turn. As part of end turn, first thing we do is check for outstanding conditions that are in effect.
So his Law of Meat condition is going to go away, and his poison is going to be affected. Poison, you take 1 damage at a time, may not be reduced in any manner.
Except for by soulstone.
Except by soulstone. So he changed his die to now say 1 poison, because next turn he'll take another poison. And then he changed his card to read 1 poison as well, and he took the damage.
Exactly. The last thing you'll check is for strategies and schemes. If that scheme marker applied to anything specifically with an existing strategy or scheme to the game, then we would count it if we need to. Once all those have been determined, words, I like them, we will go ahead and reset our decks. We'll go through this process one more time. Now we have control hands to reveal.
So you shuffle in your remaining flip deck and your discard pile. Notice our control hands are set to the side, well away from accidentally being shuffled in. That is very important. There's nothing worse than having a Red Joker in your hand and then shuffling it back in.
Or a black joker.
Yeah, black jokers are nice to have in your hand because you know where they are. Then you know you're not going to flip it. Now that I've finished shuffling, I'm going to offer him the chance to cut it.
I'm going to pass the option to cut her deck.
I am going to go ahead and cut his.
Again, one final shuffle allowed after a cut has been issued. Now that our decks have been squared away and we've agreed upon them, we can go to our control hands. We can discard any number of cards we wish to discard. And now we draw back up to 6.
So I have 2 cards left, so I'm going to draw a total of 4.
And I had 1 card remaining. 6. And with that, we conclude our tutorial.
Thank you very much.
See you in a minute for the post battle. All right, and welcome back for the post segment. Monica?
So one of the things we wanted to cover in this post segment is we did mention caches a couple times. When you have a master, they start out with a cache of soul stones. They do not cost anything towards buying them into your crew. Your crew members will have cost numbers listed in their upper right hand corner of their cards, where the masters have their cache. Right. And henchmen, because they can be leaders if you are running a specific range of point values, they have a cost and a cache listed on their cards. So you do need to be careful to make sure you're using the correct number.
So other applications of this, you will set a point value with your opponent at the beginning of the game. The average game is 50. The most number of soul stones you are allowed to carry into a game is 7. So Marcus, for example, has a cache of
4,
which means you can short yourself 3 points in purchasing models, 47 points spent on your crew, to have your full 7 soul stones.
So like my jackalope costs 2 soul stones to hire. So if I decided to just forego hiring the jackalope, I could just add 2 soul stones to Marcus's crew and he'd have 6 to start the game out.
Indeed.
It all kind of depends on how you like to run your crews and how you like to utilize or just ignore soul stones.
Some people prefer to maximize models, some people prefer to maximize soul stones. Henchmen are allowed to lead battles of 40 soul stones or less. Mm-hmm. At 41 soul stones, you are required to take a master. If you take a henchman and you're running a 40 soul stone game or lower, the henchman as your leader becomes free, and you get his cash instead of his cost, and you ignore the cost.
Like Miranda's card states, she has a cost of 8, so if I was hiring her into a crew that had Marcus, she would cost 8. But she has a cash of 5, so if I was running her as the leader, she would come with 5 soul stones to begin with.
Indeed. So as we mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is the start of a new series of tactica and strategy for the game of Malifaux.
And basic instructions.
Right. We wanted to cover the basics in this one. Look for future videos. We're going to start with detailing game setup, going through the entire process of setting the game from beginning to end, crew selection, strategy, schemes, a little bit on terrain. And the order
they're in, because sometimes that gets very confusing, and it's very important to utilize the correct order when you're involved in things like tournaments and leagues, because that can affect games. Exactly.
Other things we'll look at as soulstone strategies, your control hand in detail, the terrain in detail, and individual master strategies later down the line. So look for the 2 and 300 series of Malifaux Survival.
If you have any specific questions or scenarios that you kind of like to see highlighted in one of the videos, and we'll see what we can do, please let us know in the comments.
Indeed. Again, thanks for watching. Like, link, and subscribe. Weekend Warriors, Weird Place, ShieldBreaker Games. Overlord out.
Wenchwoman out.